DreAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. Dre, what is personal initiative? That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Y'all know me. And welcome to the show. And today's topic is, we are starting what's actually going to be two 3-part mini-series back to back, where I'm going to explain to you, first of all, why MAGA, Make America Great Again, which all of you know is Donald Trump's slogan slash brand slash movement for his political ambitions. I'm going to tell you in the first 3 parts, this first 3-part miniseries, why MAGA is great for America. And then, because we got to be balanced, we got to be fair, in the second 3-part series that follows this, I'm going to tell you why MAGA is terrible for America. So first we're going to talk about why it's great. Then we're going to talk about why it's terrible. That's what I'm going to do in this series, followed by the next series. And maybe I should start with why MAGA is terrible. Then we'll go to why MAGA is great. Let me see. I'm going to make this executive decision right now while I'm talking to you. Why MAGA is, let me see. Yeah, actually, let's start with why MAGA is terrible for America. Then we're going to do why MAGA is great for America. So we're going to do both. And I'm going to start with the terrible side, and then we'll go to the great side. That's what we're going to do here today and tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, the day after that, and the day after that. And I mean all that literally. So with that said, before we get into any of this, let me first start by telling you a couple housekeeping things that you need to know. Number one, Work on Your Game University. All right, if you would like to work with me directly and have me as your direct coach, there is one way to make that happen. That is as a member of the university. The way you can learn more about getting into the university is by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link is down below in the description to this episode. Secondly, we have if you are not on my email list, and I'm rearranging notes here because I just made this decision while I'm doing this. Secondly, is getting on my email list completely for free by going to workonmygame.com. I send out emails every single day. I call it the daily game email. Get those free straight to your inbox every single morning. Just go to workonmygame.com. I already told you about workonyourgameuniversity.com. And if you're not on my text list, make sure you get in my text community. When we start sending that message out again, you'll be getting those straight to your phone. All that out the way, let's pick it up right where we're supposed to be picking up, which is, again, executive decision. Why MAGA is terrible for America is where we are going to start here today. Why MAGA is terrible for America. Now, again, all of you know what MAGA is. And it's Donald Trump's movement, his political campaign, his group, his union, whatever you want to call the people who support Donald Trump and his whole thing. Now, being an objective, critical thinker that I am, I always tell you that you must be able to argue both sides of any conversation. So what I'm going to do here is first start with the pushback against the MAGA movement, since MAGA and Donald Trump won the 2024 election and they are already in power and doing their things as of this recording, and probably still doing those things while you are listening to this, which will be several weeks or a month or two later from when I'm recording it. Well, let's start by offering some counterbalance to MAGA, because they got a lot of momentum right now, which they should have because they won. And then we'll offer a counterbalance to the counterbalance by telling you why MAGA is great. So we're going to start by talking about why MAGA is bad. I'm going to offer a pushback against this movement and what it represents to tell you the strongest arguments against its existence as we enter. We've already entered it. And as we continue the second presidential term of Donald Trump. And I think it's going to be the final. And again, I'm being tongue in cheek there by saying I think it's going to be the final, because you never know. He might be a dictator from day one. He might rip up the Constitution. He might try to make himself a king. He wants to be like Hitler, and he will never leave office peacefully ever again. So who knows? Maybe he'll be president and dictator forever. Again, tongue in cheek. Point number one. Topic once again here today is why MAGA is terrible for America. Number one, MAGA has a polarizing leader, and that leads to more division amongst the citizens. And every point that I'm making here today, these are arguments that someone who is anti-MAGA would make. These are not things that I necessarily believe. If there are things that I believe, I'll tell you that there are things I believe. This one is one that I believe that other people believe it. So this is not what I believe. I believe people look at Trump and they say he's a polarizing leader, and his presence creates more division amongst the citizens. Now, I started to say that I don't believe Donald Trump is attempting to be any more polarizing than any other politician, but it would be wrong to say that. I actually would disagree with that position. I think Donald Trump does actually try to draw a clear line in the sand between himself and his opponents, between his supporters and his detractors, because he understands how well this works for marketing, for drawing attention, and for keeping a spotlight on himself. I do believe that Donald Trump thinks this way, and I believe that he behaves in a way that is reflective of these thoughts. And again, this is just my theory because you can't read another person's mind. I do believe that he does this intentionally. And this is something that he's been doing back to his businessman only days before he got into politics. He was the type of person who liked to have the spotlight on him. He liked to market and promote himself. He liked to have people talking about him in any way. Didn't even matter if it was being negative, because he understood the power of the press, the power of attention. And the man knows how to get it, and he knows how to keep it. Again, whether you like him or not, this is true. And one way to get attention in today's world, where there are so many things vying for our attention, is to do something that emotionally triggers people, positively or negatively. Donald Trump knows how to do that. And he knows how to keep it going once he does it. See, it's one thing for somebody to do it one time and it comes and goes. Another thing to just keep it going for damn near 10 years straight, which is what Donald Trump has done. That's a feat. That's a skill. So is he doing this? Yes, he is. Does this lead to division? Yes, it does. Now, is he trying to divide America? I don't think so. But do his actions lead to America being divided? The answer is yes. Now, does that make him at fault for it? In some ways, you can say that he is at least tangibly responsible. But is he at fault for it? I wouldn't use that term. I wouldn't say he's at fault for it. I say people can choose to respond to him however they wish. And if you choose to be reactive and you choose to be staunchly against him and his movement because that's the choice that you made, then you can't blame that on him. You got to blame that on yourself because you made the choice. Again, now he may be the reason for your choice, but it is still your choice. So these are things that, again, Donald Trump's been doing this stuff his entire career before politics, and people have reacted so strongly to his polarizing strategies. This has led to the country being more divided amongst at least political thinkers than there's ever been in my lifetime. There's more political division. I've never seen this kind of type of political division in all my lifetime. Now, again, I don't necessarily think this is a negative thing, but I'm making an argument of people who go against MAGA. They do see this as a negative thing. They see it as a very negative thing. And we cannot ignore this point. If you're going to make the argument against Donald Trump and MAGA, you have to bring this up. This is a very strong point for someone who was arguing against them. If I was hired as a lawyer and they said, Dre, we're going to give you $1 million. We want you to make the strongest case you could possibly make against the MAGA movement. This would be one of my points. All right, this is what an objective critical thinker can do. Okay, everybody understand what I'm doing here? I should have said that in the intro, but y'all got it. You're still listening. You got it. So Donald Trump is perfectly at home in the midst of consternation. He's perfectly at home. This is a walk in the park for him. Most people, however, are not perfectly at home in the midst of conflict, consternation, anxiety, or things that would cause anxiety in most people or lead to stress in most people seem to not bother him. He's a different type of individual. And this is the reason why this point is this point. A lot of people criticize his presence for the fact that this consternation and this constant back and forth, this constant battle is going on. They get mad at him for it because most people are they're extremely disturbed when these kind of things take place. Donald Trump is not disturbed by it. That's the reason why he can keep it going and seem to not be bothered and have all these court cases against him and people suing him and half the country hating him. And it seems to not really be affecting him that much because this is normal for him. It's not normal for most people. Moving on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, we're talking why MAGA is terrible for the United States of America. This is part 1 of a 3-part series. Number 2, the economic inequality and policies that Donald Trump wants to enact that tend to favor the wealthy. There's another knock you can put against Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. Donald Trump has given, this is factual, he has given tax cuts to the wealthy meaning people who earn over a certain amount of money, which is more than what most people earn. And people are trying to, and sometimes successfully, using this against him politically. Definitely using it against him rhetorically, meaning there are other people with podcasts trashing Donald Trump because he's giving tax cuts to people with a lot of money. So they're using it. They're using it against him. Well, what impact that has is a different story. But are they trying? Yes, they are. Now, this is generally a shallow point. Let me tell you why it's a shallow point. Because all presidents, Democratic and Republican presidents, come up with some form of tax cut that you either know about or that you don't know about. And those tax cuts are generally most beneficial to the people who are most responsible for keeping that president in power. And you know who those people are? People with a lot of money. All right, that applies to the Democrat presidents. That applies to the Republican presidents. They do things that give benefits and breaks to the people who do the most to help them maintain and consolidate power. And those people are usually powerful people who have lots of money. All right, so this is not something that Donald Trump just came up with just because he came into politics as a billionaire. And this is something that Kamala Harris tried to use against him a lot in her campaign, which we know failed. But they tried to use this against him a lot. Well, he's a billionaire, so he's only going to try to help his rich friends. When the fact of the matter is, there's a whole bunch of rich people helping the Democrats. Just because the president or the nominee for president doesn't happen to be publicly noted for being rich doesn't mean that there aren't a whole bunch of rich people helping them out. And if they were to win, it doesn't mean that they won't do a whole bunch of things to help those rich people even further in order to consolidate power and maintain your position. They all do it. Doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on. They all do it. So this is actually a shallow point for that reason alone. But people have been able to push this idea because Donald Trump himself is independently wealthy outside of politics, whereas his opponents have not been. Hillary Clinton, that's a whole other story. Hillary Clinton, then Joe Biden, and then Kamala Harris. Well, at least Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been pretty much, it's noted that they're not nearly as wealthy as Donald Trump is. Hillary Clinton maybe not as wealthy, but she's made a lot of money doing some things that are highly questionable. Let's just say that. We won't even go into Hillary here today. All presidents do these things, though. That's my point. And they help people out who are most responsible for them. Donald Trump did not create this, responsible for their position, getting into politics in the first place. Donald Trump didn't start this. He just has so many enemies in the media and in politics that anything negative about him that gets put out into the world, it gets emphasized all out of proportion. And there's a whole bunch of people who buy into it and perpetuate it. That's why these things become storylines. Not because he's the first one to do it, not because he's doing it more egregiously than anybody else, just because he has so many people that don't like him. Anything negative about him, people immediately tether themselves to it and they push it, and make it seem bigger than it actually is. And again, most people, if they had a legion of people doing this to them all day, every day for 10 years straight, they would be driven crazy. They'd be in an insane asylum at a mental health hospital. Donald Trump just keeps moving, right, as if nothing's happening. That's what makes him different. So the fact that there's always been a small percentage of people with a lot of the money and a large percentage of people who have less of the money, Donald Trump didn't start that. He didn't create it, and he is not the reason that it exists. He has not exacerbated it with anything that he's done, even though a lot of his enemies will tell you that that's what he's doing. He's exacerbating the gap between the wealthy and the poor by what he's doing as president. Bullshit. The gap between the wealthy and the poor grows because of the behaviors of the wealthy and the poor. So if you consider yourself poor, that's not because of the government or Donald Trump. It's because of you. It's because of what you're doing. And if you consider yourself rich or on your way to being rich, that's not because of the government or Donald Trump. It's because of you. It's because of what you're doing. That's why there's a gap. If there were no government at all, there'd still be 1% rich people and 99% poor people. If Kamala Harris won, there'd still be 1% rich people, 99% poor people. And as long as I've been eligible to vote, let's just say this century, there's always been rich people and poor people. The gap has gotten wider because people's behaviors continue. The behaviors that make people rich, they keep doing them. The behaviors that make people poor and lower class, they keep doing them. That's why the gap keeps getting bigger. This has nothing to do with the government. People like to blame the government because they're a convenient scapegoat that people can use as a rationalization for their own situation so that they don't have to take responsibility, look in the mirror, and do anything different. Let me just keep living how I'm living and blame somebody so then I'm not responsible for my situation. This is loser mentality, and there are a lot of losers in the world, unfortunately. This is what it is. So these things get exacerbated, again, by the habits of the people in the groups. The problem with this way of thinking is that it's a little bit too logical and a little bit too much dripping with accountability for most people to accept it, what I just explained. That rich people are rich because of their habits and broke, poor, lower class people are that because of their habits. Now, is it possible that you could be born into a situation that is less advantageous than someone else's? Absolutely. Does it happen every day? Yes, it does. Will it continue to happen? Yes, it will. Does that mean that you are deemed to stay in the space that you're in the United States of America in 2025? No, absolutely not. The United States of America offers more opportunity for upward mobility than anywhere else in the fucking world. So no, there's this group and that group. You're not stuck in any group. Even if you're rich, you ain't stuck there. You can become poor. Donald Trump has political enemies who understand all of this stuff very well, and they leverage it emotionally to draw attention to themselves by trashing him and using these things as examples. That's what they do. This is all political theater. That's what it is. It's political theater. They are using you, citizens, as pawns in their theater game. All right, they know exactly what they're doing. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why Donald Trump / MAGA is terrible for the United States of America. Point number 3, trade wars that hurt American businesses with higher costs. Now, Donald Trump has made clear in his first term and made it more clear in his second term this concept of putting America first. Everybody knows he's all America first, right? And one of the ways that he wants to put America first is by putting the squeeze on businesses that are doing business outside of America when they could be doing that same business inside of America. In other words, if you run a company here in the United States and instead of manufacturing here in the USA, you're outsourcing your manufacturing to another country and then having those goods shipped into America and then selling them. Donald Trump would prefer that you do all your manufacturing here in the United States. Or if you're a company that is based outside of the United States, you're not even an American company, but you want to sell your stuff to America, you import your goods here and sell them to Americans. Donald Trump doesn't want as much of that as what we have. He wants all the manufacturing, all the sales, again, theoretically, to all be happening within the United States. Now, why does he care? Why does it matter to him? It matters to him because if I'm running a company and I'm outsourcing my manufacturing to Thailand right now, but instead I start doing all my manufacturing in Miami, well, guess what? I got to hire a bunch of people in Miami to have jobs. Now I'm giving more jobs to Americans, which makes the president look good and the economy look good because the government gets to tax all my employees before they even see a dollar of their own money. The money gets taken out of their check, goes to the government. That increases the tax base. The government loves entrepreneurs for that reason. This is the reason why the government loves entrepreneurs. This is the reason why entrepreneurs get tax breaks, because entrepreneurs create jobs, which means more people are employed. And it also means more people are getting taxed before they get to touch their own money. And that's what the government wants. The largest piece of the tax base, the largest volume level, when I mean the number of people in the tax base, are employees. Now, the majority of the money comes from the rich and the wealthy companies and people, but the majority of people, the number of people, is the tax base of employees. They get taxed first, they get taxed the most as a percentage. So the government loves when a business owner goes and creates a bunch of jobs, because there's a whole bunch of people whose money we can take before they get a say in what happens with their own money. Employees. Any of you who's an employee right now, look at your last paycheck. Look at the pay stub, right? Don't look at the check, look at the stub. And look at all the deductions. All right, those are taxes that got taken from you before you had a chance to say anything. The government loves people like you. And who creates jobs for people like you? Entrepreneurs. You understand? So what Donald Trump wants to do is have more entrepreneurs create more jobs in America for these bigger picture reasons, and because it just makes him look good, gives more people jobs, and he gets to take credit for that. And what he does as a way of enticing people to do this is he uses trade tariffs. Simple explanation for a tariff is that if I run a company here in the United States and I'm making widgets, I'm making clip-on microphones that you can use for your cameras, and I'm getting those manufactured in China and then having them mailed over here and selling them to Americans, what Donald Trump is going to tell me is that, Dre, you have to pay a tariff, a $1 tariff on every single microphone you import. So if you import 1,000 microphones, instead of just importing them and selling them, you got to pay a $1 tax on every single unit you bring in. So you bring in 1,000 units, you owe the government $1,000. And I'm very much simplifying this concept, but this is basically how the tariff works. And he does the same thing with outsider companies that are not based in the United States. And the whole goal of this is, if I feel the pain financially of having to continuing to pay those tariffs, then I might decide, well, it's not worth it to pay the tariffs. Why not just start manufacturing here in America so I can avoid that tax? That's the goal. What usually happens when a company faces these type of taxes is that they just raise their prices to make up for that dollar. So if I'm selling my microphones for $30, now I got to pay a $1 tax. I'm just going to raise the price of the microphones to $31 so that you, the customer, pays the tax. So now your prices go up. Now consumers are complaining about the prices going up, but this is one of the trade-offs of more manufacturing happening here in the United States. One of the reasons why a lot of companies manufacture outside of the United States is because it is much cheaper to hire people, workers, in other countries than it is here in America. America has a very high standard of living. If you're going to have a full-time job here in the United States as an adult, you have to make a certain amount of money. Otherwise, you can't make ends meet. You can't pay bills and put food on your table if you're making less than a certain amount of money. But that amount, let's say that basic amount to, let's say, full-time head of household, even if it's just you might need, you might need $20 an hour living in the United States if you're working full-time. Let's just say that's how much you need to have your own apartment by yourself and pay your bills and put food on your table. But if you live in Sri Lanka, or you live in the Philippines, or you live in India, you can do the same job at the same level, but you don't need $20 an hour because the cost of living where you live is not as high as it is in Miami. So you can do the same job for $7 an hour. So if I'm owning a business, I got to hire 10 employees. I want to spend $20 times 7 every hour, which is what, $140 every hour for labor? Or do I want to spend $7 times 10 every hour, which is only $70 in labor every, I got that number right? If it's $20 per hour, 10 people, that's $200, $200 or $70 per hour. Which one do I want to spend? Because those numbers start adding up. I'm looking at my expenses and I'm looking at my costs for operating. Part of my operating cost is paying the staff. I'd much rather save money on staff, and I'm outsourcing all those jobs. So all the Americans get fired. Now you went from making $20 to making $0. And now what I'm going to do, because they raised the minimum wage, they said instead of 20, you got to pay them 25. I'll fire all of them. So now you went from 20 to 0, not 20 to 25, 20 to 0, because I fired you. And now I'm going to go hire those people in India and I'm going to pay them $7 an hour. The amount that I pay in tariffs is less than the difference of the money that I saved in not hiring Americans. So let's say the tariff is $3 per unit. Every unit that I bring in is $3 tax. Now, again, this depends on how many units I'm bringing in. But the point is I can save more money. The money that I save on labor costs eats the costs that I'm incurring by importing. So I might still import and pay the tariff. And I may still raise prices anyway, just so I can keep my money. Why? Because I'm a greedy businessman. I want to keep as much money as possible. So any increased costs, I'm passing them on to the customer. That's what I'm going to do. It doesn't make me a bad person. Just that's how it works. It's business. And Donald Trump has admitted there may be some short-term pain in this process. And everyone needs to understand this about politicians. They make certain promises during their campaigns that they can and will sometimes keep. The thing is, no politician ever tells you the trade-off of their promises. And every promise has a trade-off because it costs something. The cost of more companies doing business in America and doing manufacturing and hiring in America is that America costs more money than the places that they're outsourcing to, which means not ostensibly, the word is inevitably, the cost of your goods are going to go up if more work is being done here in America, because Americans need to be paid. American workers got to get paid. It costs more money to do business here in America. And this is the reason why companies outsource. So if you don't want companies outsourcing, you want more jobs here in America, you have to pull more money out of your pocket when you buy stuff that is made in America because it costs more money to do it here. That is the trade-off that the politicians cannot announce to you because nobody would vote for you if you announced the reality to them. This is the reason why I can't be in politics, because I would explain to people the trade-off of every single thing that I'm promising to you, and you wouldn't be so excited about it when you knew the trade-off. See, it's exciting when I say we're going to get all the immigrants, we're going to stop them from stealing your jobs, and we're going to make sure all of you have jobs. You get all excited about that, but when I tell you the trade-off of you having a job is that you cost more money than the outsourced people, therefore the cost of your eggs and your bread and your cars and your gas and your clip-on microphones are all going to increase in exchange for you having a job. See, that's the truth, is reality, but you don't want to hear it. See, I couldn't win an election if I told you the reality. I can only tell you half the story if I want to win. That's the reason why I can't be in politics, is I would have to tell you half the story. I'd be lying by omission. You have no choice but to lie when you're a politician in America. You understand? And again, I'm painting with a very broad brush here. There are whole books written on these things, and you should read them. So the point is that if you no longer import your goods, it will cost more money. All right, everybody understands that, right? So manufacturing is forced back into America. More Americans get jobs, good thing, but the cost goes up, bad thing. Everything in life has a trade-off, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know. The trade-off of America first is that America costs more money than what everybody's doing right now. Did everybody hear that? The trade-off of America first is that it costs more money to do things. So if you want things to be America first, you want to make America great again, understand you have to come out of your pocket with more money to support that concept. Donald Trump can't tell you that during a campaign because he won't win an election if he told you that. It's not that it's not true. It's just he can't tell you if he wants to win. Same thing on the Democratic side. They can't tell you the cost of all the promises that they're making because they told you the cost, you wouldn't want it. And therefore, you wouldn't vote for them. This is the game that you have to play in politics. Politics is a very dirty game. That's why I'm not in it. But this is the reality of the situation. So in case any of you didn't know, now you know. So the short-term pain that a lot of Trump's enemies are using against him right now, hey, look, the costs are still going up. Donald Trump didn't lower the cost of eggs yet. I see people saying this on social media. They know what they're doing. They're playing the game because they don't like Donald Trump. So they're using it rhetorically to make him look bad. And people who don't understand what I just explained, they may be thinking that they got fooled by Donald Trump. No, you did not get fooled by Donald Trump. He lied by omission, which all politicians do. You just didn't go and find out what exactly he was talking about. And you didn't understand as an adult what you should understand was everything in life has a trade-off. There are no perfect scenarios. Anything that sounds amazing on the surface, you need to find out what does it cost for that amazing thing to happen, because there is a cost. And either you're going to pay it or somebody else is going to pay it. You're either going to pay it now or you're going to pay it later, but it will be paid. Guaranteed. There are no perfect scenarios in life, ladies and gentlemen. The first law of economics, second law of economics, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Donald Trump just says, I'm just going to make sure everybody has a job. Okay, what's the cost of everybody having a job? So there is a cost. Just because he didn't tell you doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's your job to find out. Freedom is not free, ladies and gentlemen. You want independence, you got to pay for it. If America wants to be energy independent, we got to pay for it. If America wants to be independent when it comes to our workers and make sure we can get everything done and manufactured here in America, we got to pay for it. When I say we, I mean us as consumers. We got to pay for that. It's not free. We got to pay for it. But you let his enemies tell you he's just using you and bamboozling you. And see, this is the trade-off of a lot of you not being highly informed or asking the right questions. The good news is this show exists to solve that problem for you. Just make sure you tune in and listen every day. I'll help you out. Donald Trump can't articulate these things because, again, politically, it would be suicidal for him to articulate these things because it would cost him the election. I can articulate these things because I'm not trying to win a vote from you. I'm just telling you what it is. It would piss off too many people if he told you the truth. And most people don't want to do this level of thinking. What I just explained takes a good amount of mental and intellectual computation just for you to even listen to what I'm saying. Can Donald Trump say this on a campaign speech? No. Nobody wants to hear this shit, even though it's true. A lot of people don't want to hear it. So I understand that this is a political game he has to play. I'm not playing a political game. That's why I'm able to break these things down and explain it to you and tell you the truth, because I don't need you to be excited about what I'm telling you. I just need you to understand what I'm telling you. He needs you to be excited because he hasn't won the election. I don't need you to be excited. I just need you to understand. So we're playing different games. All that said, let's recap today's class. This was part 1 of our 3-part mini-series, Why MAGA is Terrible for the United States of America. And I'm explaining this again as if I was a lawyer hired to trash MAGA. What would I say? Point number 1, a polarizing leader that leads to more division amongst the citizens. I don't think Trump is trying to be openly so much divisive. I do believe he is trying to be, He's trying to keep people stirred up, let's say, for lack of a better term. He knows that he can do that, and he does it very well. He's an expert at it. He does continue to do that. I don't think he's trying to make people hate him, but I don't think he minds that people do. Number 2, economic inequality and policies that tend to favor the wealthy. This is really a straw man point because all politicians do this, but people are able to use it against Trump just because he is publicly noted for being a billionaire before he got into politics, even though the Democrats do it just as much, if not more, than the Republicans. Number 3, trade wars that hurt American businesses with higher costs. Again, as I already broke down and explained it to you, the higher costs are a trade-off of Americans having more jobs and America doing more of its own manufacturing and America being more independent of outside resources. If we want that independence, we have to pay for it as consumers because it's going to cost more money. So this is a talking point used against Trump, but it's actually a fallacious point, but it is a point. If I was making an argument, I wouldn't give you all the explanation. All the explanation I just gave you, I'm giving you that because I'm trying to give you the truth. But if I was just a lawyer trying to trash Trump, I would leave out all the explanation, just tell you the bad part. But I'm giving you all of the parts because I want you to understand this in full context. All that said, tomorrow, we got more. I'm going to trash Donald Trump and MAGA even more in parts 2 and part 3. So if you like this one or this informed you, just wait till you hear part 2 and part 3. And then after that, we're going to do 3 parts about MAGA is actually good for America. So stay tuned. And again, I'm playing a role here in both of these sides. I don't have a side politically. I'm on the side of logic, objectivity, performance, and producing results, and making sure the people in my audience understand these things that may seem complex, but when broken down, they're very simple to understand. So please do not peg me on any side of the political aisle. I am not on any side of the political aisle, and I'm on the side of logic and objectivity. Now, when I tend to do that, people tend to think that I'm conservative. I will ask you, and I will leave you with this question. Why do people tend to think logic and objectivity is conservative? What does that say about the liberals? All that said, folks, workonmygame.com. Get on my email list for free. Workonyourgameuniversity.com. Have me as your direct coach. Let's get to work on breaking down what you're doing into its simplest elements and get to work on making it happen the way you want it to happen. That's at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all